Have you ever felt like you keep getting stuck? Like no matter how hard you try, you keep returning to the same problems over and over again? I've definitely felt this way from time to time, and it kind of feels like this.
С этой стороны, против солнца.
I can't stop laughing when I watch that video. I just laugh every time I watch it over and over because I can relate, both from the sheep's perspective and the guys trying to help him out of the ditch's perspective. As soon as we get unstuck, we tend to get stuck again, and we watch people who get unstuck and then get stuck again. This video takes on even more significance when we realize that in the Bible, followers of Jesus are often referred to as sheep. So it's not surprising that we can relate to this video. Most of us have been pulled out of a ditch only to jump right back into the same ditch. You're joining us for the second week of our series called I Am. And in this series, we're looking at the I am statements that Jesus said about himself in the book of John in the Bible. Now, in this series, we're also going through a reading plan that takes us through the whole book of John. And you can join us for that reading plan by texting the word Bible to 816-608-4767. So we're reading through the book of John, and John, the author of the book of John, of course, he wrote this book with a very clear purpose in mind. He said that we may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing we may have life in his name. That's why he wrote the book. John doesn't immediately expect us to automatically believe. He knows we will struggle with belief. So he carefully curated this book of stories from eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life in the hope that we will believe, because belief in Jesus is life, and not just any life. Jesus himself says, I have come that you may have life, life to the full, an abundant full life. Now, if you've been reading along with us in the book of John, you know that it starts out like this. It says things like, in the beginning was the Word. In him was life. That life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness. So John, writing a book to help us know Jesus and ultimately believe that Jesus is the Messiah, starts by describing Jesus as the Word, as light, as the life. It kind of feels like even John has trouble describing Jesus. So he uses things that are familiar, like word, light, life. And then we'll see this kind of theme continue throughout the book, where Jesus himself also uses common things to describe who he is. He says, I am. I am the bread. I am the light. I am the resurrection. I am the life. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the vine. I am the branches. Jesus says all these things so that we might know him. And today we're going to dig into two of those I am statements that Jesus offers us in John chapter 10. Interestingly, both of these statements are connected to the story of sheep. Jesus says this about the story of sheep. He says, I am the gate, and he says, I am the good shepherd. So let's start at the beginning of John 10. Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. So Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore, Jesus said again, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. And all who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to kill, steal, and destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." So everyone that Jesus was talking to would have understood sheep, sheep gates, and sheep pens. They were everywhere. Jesus probably pointed them out while he was talking, like this sheep over here. A sheep pen would have been a stone wall made to keep the sheep safe at night from predators and thieves. And then there was an open space, the primary entrance to the pen, an open place in the wall. And the gate was how the shepherd went in and went out of the pen. And the thieves and the robbers would try to enter by climbing over the wall, but the shepherd would only enter by the gate. And then he would begin to call his sheep to himself by name. Now we know that sheep aren't the smartest of animals. We saw that in the video. They are by nature just, well, not smart. But they do have the ability to recognize and respond to the voice of their shepherd. And this skill is built up over time, the countless hours the flock spent near the shepherd, listening to the shepherd, following the shepherd. Over time, they become accustomed to the shepherd's voice. Now, you can almost see Jesus pointing to the nearby sheep pen as he explains to the Pharisees, "My sheep, they recognize my voice. They're going to know it's me when I'm calling to them. They're going to have spent enough time with me that when a stranger or a thief or a robber comes, they're going to avoid them because they know that's not the sound of my shepherd." So Jesus is sharing that he is the shepherd. But before he says this in an even more plainly and clear way, he first says this. He says, "I am the gate." Therefore, Jesus said again, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. And all who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture." The interesting thing about the sheep pen is the gate is referred to as the entrance to the pen, but the pen itself may or may not have had an actual gate. So maybe resources were sparse or nobody took the time to build any kind of gate. I mean, no power tools, right? So many sheep pens would have looked like this one. Just an opening, not an actual gate. Instead, it would not have been uncommon for the shepherd himself to lay down at the entrance of the pen. The shepherd at night would act as the gate. He would sleep in the opening of the pen so that anyone or anything trying to enter the pen would first need to go through the shepherd. So when Jesus says, "I am the gate for the sheep," he's saying if you want to enter life with God, if you want to be in the life that God has for you, if you want to enter my flock, you're going to have to go through me. He's saying, "I am the gate." Quite literally, I am the only way to life with God. It's through me. And I will literally lay down my life for the sheep to have the opportunity for a right relationship with God, my Father. I will actually die for this, Jesus is saying. This is an astounding metaphor, one that uses a common thing, a gate, to describe who Jesus is. Now, I recognize that sometimes people get uncomfortable with the claim that Jesus is the only way to God. Maybe people feel like that's exclusive or rigid. People don't want to feel constrained by that idea. They would rather keep their options open, thank you very much. But I think the picture Jesus paints with this metaphor is actually quite amazing. In order to enter the pasture, the place of protection and provision, we must enter through the gate. And Jesus says to us, I'm the gate. There is no other way to enter. There's no other way to be in right relationship with God other than through the one gate that God has offered. But here's the best part. The gate isn't exclusive. It's actually inclusive. Jesus invites everyone, anyone, to enter through the gate. There is only one gate, but anyone can come in. And when you come in, there's life. And the gate, it's just not a way for the sheep to come in. Jesus also says it's a way for them to go out. Jesus says, well, they will come in and they will go out. They'll come in for safety and protection, and they will go out for abundant life that Jesus promises. He's essentially saying, I'm not only the gateway in for protection and safety, I am the gateway out to nourishment, pasture, and life. So that's the first I am statement in this passage. And the second one is like the grand crescendo of all the images that Jesus has been using up to this point. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. To Jesus' audience, this is a powerful, shocking, and carefully delivered metaphor. One of the most famous passages of the Bible starts like this: the Lord is my shepherd. You've maybe heard it, Psalm 23. And God is depicted as the shepherd of Israel. Now, Jesus certainly knows this psalm. The people listening to him know the psalm. And so by using this metaphor, Jesus is audaciously saying, I am the good shepherd. Jesus is saying, I am the God who shepherded Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I am the God who shepherded David. I am the God who shepherded all of Israel. Jesus is making a very clear statement that he is in fact God. And he has come to shepherd anyone who enters in through the gate. And as big and as powerful as that statement is, it's also such a tender and practical picture for you and I. We're longing for guidance. We need anyone to give us direction in our lives. We want protection. We want to be sent out into a hopeful life of freedom and abundance. I believe we want a shepherd. We want someone we can follow. We want someone who can make sense of it all. You know how I know this? Because we're looking everywhere for it. We're looking on social media. We're looking at influencers, politicians, experts, authors. We're looking at movies. We're listening to podcasts. We're looking at television personalities. But into all that noise, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And Jesus not only says, I am the shepherd, he also says, I am good. I will not abandon you or forsake you. I won't leave you stranded or alone. I won't lead you astray. I'm going to care for you all the way down to laying down my life for you because I am a good shepherd. So how are we as sheep supposed to respond to this metaphor? Jesus is the gate and the shepherd. Well, first, we know that sheep listen to the voice of their shepherd. There's so much noise and information overload in our culture, in our time, so much. It's hard to hear the voice of the shepherd. We have to get quiet and recognize the voice of Jesus. I feel like somehow I end up saying this every time I talk with you, but I can't help it because it's so true. We have to get quiet and listen for the voice of Jesus in our lives. Now, you can do this by using the John reading plan that we talked about together. Text the word Bible to the number 816-608-4767, and then read that daily passage, and then set a timer. This is the part that we might neglect. Set a timer for 2 to 5 minutes, and sit in silence, and ask Jesus to speak to you through what you read. I hear so many people say to me, like, I can't do that silence part. Like, my mind is just racing, so that doesn't work for me. So silence is just not going to work. And to you, I would say, yeah, my mind's racing too. It takes practice, like lots of practice. Start with 30 seconds if you have to. Now, practice will not make this perfect. We're probably never going to be perfect at that. But practice will make it permanent. Our practice will actually create a new neural pathway in our brain that will help us literally change. It'll help us literally calm ourselves when things are intense or overexcitable. It'll help us go back to that place where we know can be a place of safety, where we can meet with God. I have been practicing this now for like 5 years. And I feel more peace, hope, joy. I feel more life to the full, just like Jesus promised. So we begin by listening. And then secondly, we learn to follow the shepherd. Disciples of Jesus hear from him and then do what he says. And when we follow what he says, we can find peace. It's not always going to be easy what Jesus says to us, but we will be at peace because we will know that we are being led by a good shepherd that has our best interests at heart. So we listen to the shepherd, we follow the shepherd, and finally we live with the shepherd. While preparing for this message, I did a little deep dive on sheep living without a shepherd, and I found Alex. Alex had been lost from his flock for years. He was without a shepherd to care for him. Most sheep have to be sheared every year to keep their wool from being overgrown, but Alex had no one to do this for him. He's without a shepherd. And when he finally got some care, they found that he was surprisingly underweight. The excess wool had impaired his vision, so he could not see well enough to eat. He had painful sores where irritating grass and weeds got stuck in his wool. As one rescuer put it, a sheep that goes too long without a shepherd will often find themselves vulnerable to disease and danger. Since being saved, Alex has been relieved of 88 pounds of burdensome wool. He can see the world more clearly, he can eat more easily, and he can walk with freedom. How often do you and I try to live our lives without a shepherd? And the weight of life is dragging us down, and we can't see well enough to get the food we really need. And we can hardly walk because of the heavy burdens that were weighing us down. And maybe this is true for some of us here. You're feeling the weight of life without direction and protection. And maybe there was a time when you were following the Good Shepherd, but in recent months or years, you'd have to admit that you've wandered. And now you're feeling like the dangers and the painful sores starting to set in. But we can change that. We can listen, we can follow, and we can live with the Good Shepherd. I keep picturing what it would mean for Jesus to care for us, to remove our excess wool, to tend to the diseases, to nurse us back to health, to guide, to protect, to love. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. And surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for being our good shepherd, for guiding us and loving us. God, help us to be sheep who follow you, to accept our role and trust you as our leader and Lord of our lives. Forgive us when we try to always do it our own way. Heal us of the wounds and bumps and bruises that we've gotten along the way. Guide us and lead us. We pray this in your name.